Thanks for coming down. Why I've asked for this today particularly addressed to, again, a recent spat of gun and gang violence in the city that resulted in another shooting in the Marlborough area yesterday. I think it's important for everybody to get a sense of the issue that's facing the city and the Calgary Police Service right now. This year and this time in the city, we're certainly seeing more and more of this propensity for gun violence and the presence of gangs. It's an effect that big cities go through, but I want to everybody rest assured that something that the Calgary Police Service is taken incredibly seriously. We are presently involved in over 5 major operations that deal with gun and gang violence in the city. We have several others in the queue waiting to be stood up. We have over 85 other operations within the city related to this event, and have coordinated ourselves to create a ongoing real-time intelligence picture about what's going on and help to inform us about how to deploy and how to react to this. We have our real-time operations center that on a 24-hour basis is monitoring these events and trying to respond. We have all of our subject matter experts around the guns and gang issue here as well to talk about what they see and how they're approaching this. But I want you to be rest assured that the service's intent in this is to identify these people that are doing this, to arrest them, to put them before the courts and the justice system, and to lock them away. These people need to be behind bars. They need to be away from the community, and we need to be in a position so that we can assure everybody that this wanton, reckless acts of violence will not continue. Obviously, when shots are fired in a residential community, it puts everybody at risk. Bullets don't know where they stop and land. They go through walls and places, and it's not acceptable. Not acceptable for us and not acceptable for the city. So as you see, what we're going through now during my tenure as chief is to reorganize the entire service around making sure our resources are in play and available on a real-time basis. We've got an opportunity now to really look at our resources, make sure that they are fully deployed, that they're doing the things that will meet this challenge, and try to address the issues that are not being met because of our efforts on this. I mean, there are consequences to the amount of effort we're putting into this, but I'm confident through our reorganization and through our efforts that we will be able to meet the citizens' need or concerns for public safety on this. And to that, I said I'll answer any questions I can generally about the service. As we want into specifics about our efforts on guns and gangs and organized crime, we certainly have our subject matter experts here to do that, and I'll defer to them for some of that, but I'm willing to take any questions you have at this point.
So you talk a little bit about reallocating resources or putting them in new areas. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What is the main area of focus for that reallocation of resources?
Our opportunity before us now is to try to modernize the service around the realities of the city. So it's taking the resources we have, looking at how they're overall deployed, and making sure that they're available in the kind of numbers that will assist in the goals of public safety. And that means looking at the entire organization. So we're going to look at every resource we have, making sure they're available, making sure they have the training and the supervision and the direction they need to do the best job possible. And it'll give me a really good sense as to where our weaknesses really are in terms of deployment, in terms of numbers of staff, et cetera. So.
Is this something that was considered, as you took over the chief tenure, or is this something that is in direct response to this escalated violence?
No, it's something that I've considered even before becoming the chief. I think these are things that, like every business does, unfortunately, you do have to consider: are you positioned well for your current realities? And this is, unfortunately, in Calgary right now, this is our current reality. Some of our crime trends and some of the issues before us mean we have to adapt to it, and I intend to adapt very quickly to this.
You said that there's 5 ongoing operations targeting guns and gangs, 85 targeting violence and other crime. Can you elaborate on those at all?
Well, obviously it's going to be difficult to elaborate in too much detail about them specifically, but what it does, it will certainly point to, as our folks will get and talk about later, these major operations are all very resource intensive. There's so many facets of policing that go into a major operation that it's, with limited amount of resources, it puts pressure on us. But what it does do is it creates real-time intelligence. It allows us to, with our analytical efforts, allows us to compile all of our data, all our knowledge about these people, and help us put us in a position to understand when retaliations are imminent, when new attacks are imminent. How do we get in front of these things before they happen? As you can appreciate, most of these events are chaotic. They happen randomly without any warning, but some of them we get in front of. Some of the things the community won't see necessarily, the times we actually preempted violence and events, but we just want to get better at it. We want to make sure intelligence is informing us, so we deploy around it, that we have the right resources in play, and we're able to find these people, direct our resources, and get them behind bars. Quite simply, the community will be safer when some of these people are locked away.
How many people are, when you say, like, is this a large group of people? Is this a small group of people?
I think our operations are right now are looking at numbers around 50 to 100 people that we're centrally looking at right now, but it's a very fluid group. I mean, these people, that's one of the challenges is we think about gang violence traditionally, you think about communities and people wearing the same jackets, for instance, but these people generally are very, very fluid. They come and go, they relate differently to each other from time to time, and it creates challenges for policing to get on top of it.
When Rick Hansen came in, I mean, we're hearing this idea that we're going to get onto the street a lot more. We're going to get into much more 24/7 intelligence gathering. It's interesting talking veteran investigators at the time. They're saying, "Great, we're not going to be reacting now. We're not going to be behind the curve on this kind of thing." As you're stepping into this job now, I mean, what is it? I mean, I know that you've also worked organized crime investigations in the past. I mean, what is it that you want to bring to this in terms of that intelligence gathering aspect where you're ahead of the curve?
Well, appreciating the environment we're policing in, like we're very fortunate to have supportive mayor and council and supportive commissions, but we're also under a lot of pressure in terms of respecting the economics of our province and our city right now. So we just don't have the luxury of putting a massive number of people out. So we want to make sure the people that we do have are well informed, they're making the best decisions they can in the earliest instance, so the fewer people doing better jobs on an earlier time. We can't afford to get it wrong and do it over and over again and hope we get it down the road. We want to make sure we're in front of these things as it occurs. And so it's taking those resources and making sure they're all doing the right things. And that's where your intelligence models really help specifically direct you, that you're not just getting it right by luck, you're actually getting it right because you planned for it. So
I'm curious, now that you're stepping in, what do you find, what strikes you in terms of what's different in terms of the organized crime situation in Calgary than when Chief Hansen took over?
So you're referring to me when I was much younger, so when I was doing organized crime, but I mean, I would say this, is the difference is how difficult it is to notice it. Back when I was doing it many years ago, organized crime was obvious. It seemed obvious. There were people that wore certain jackets, and there might be motorcycle gangs, for instance, that were visibly obvious and you could see them. I think gangs and organized crime violence today is difficult to pick up. I mean, they could be standing beside you in the same bar with you, in the same restaurants. They don't necessarily look. You wouldn't look at it and say, hey, there's a gang member standing there. It's their ability to adapt and sort of look like part of society that makes it very difficult. That's one of the challenges. Their fluidity is very challenging. They're not beholden to each other like in the past where, we're here, we're blood brothers forever. They tend to go to each other by need. And they have different skills and different opportunities and different intelligence, and they tend to move in and out of each other. And that creates really big challenges versus what we saw in the past, where people tended to stay together out of honor or out of some sort of code of honor, I guess you'd say.
So how much of the recent violence would you say might be connected to sort of gang activity, I guess? I mean, we've seen some domestic homicides recently, but I mean, there is some violence, an increase of shooting. So how much of that is it's part of maybe a broader concern?
I mean, I guess the best way to say that is we certainly have seen statistically upticks, right? We've seen our homicides we've related to gang problems last year were, I think, 1, and this year we're up to 5. The real story behind that, though, is the events that where homicides didn't occur but could have occurred because of the amount of the presence of weapons and then the propensity to use those firearms and things that have just resulted in things like last night where nobody died, but people could have and should have died. And those are the things that are really alarming to us. The numbers of the actual statistical numbers, I'm certainly seeing big increases in the presence of weapons on the street. I think we're predicting about an 80% uptick in our seizures of weapons this year, which shows some good work, but those are alarming numbers and issues we're trying to get on top of. And I'd still say this: Calgary's an incredibly safe city to live in general for people. I think people couldn't, you certainly couldn't deny that Calgary's still a positive place to live. But these sort of things are what the police are here to get in front of, so that concept of a safe city doesn't get eroded by the acts of, quite frankly, very evil people.
Chief, you mentioned a few answers ago, you mentioned the economy. We spoke to a counselor today who said that it seems pretty clear to him that there's a connection between what we're seeing in terms of the economic downturn as well as in domestic domestic violence, he pretty sure he sees a connection there. Do you, and I know the Edmonton police chief has made this comment before, but I mean, are you willing to kind of make that connection as well?
Well, you can't make the connection by some scientific connection, but I think we can all see or believe when you see a downturn in the economy, you see the challenges around the numbers of people out of work and the change, what it changes in terms of the culture. Well, I've lived here my whole life, as a lot of you have, and you can definitely see and feel that. Is it truly scientifically associated to it? I mean, I can't say that for sure, but if you're asking me my assumption there is a relationship between the economy and the kind of crime trends in the city right now.
What's your concern about recruitment? Is it different than it has been? Is it more aggressive?
Recruitment in terms of
Gangs.
Again, because it's so fluid and so relationship based, it's hard to actually put your finger on sort of why it happens. I don't. Some of our people here would probably answer that question better for you. I'm not sure that's necessarily an outright recruitment effort as much as it's associations and these initial acts and acts of retaliation that tend to draw people in and out. And so it's just hard that's one of the challenges. It's hard to actually get your hand on how this is starting and where it's going to end.
Do you have an idea of how many groups there are, like gangs in general in Calgary right now?
I'll defer that to some of our experts if I could. If you want to get those specifics, I'll go to them because that's what I pay them for. So.
I've heard that you've been talking to, your frontline guys about how they feel about these situations. Can you tell me a little bit about what they have said? What are their thoughts about their resources and the way that the violence is being dealt with across the city?
Well, our frontline people are those, as everybody notices in the city, when these kind of troubles occur, they're the incredibly brave men and women who stand in front of these situations and put themselves at risk when we have to respond. They feel the pressure like everybody else does. They're not robots. They get that these are dangerous times for them as well. That's one of the challenges I have in my very early days, is making sure that they're properly resourced. We have the kind of numbers of people here that can respond to what's facing Calgary today. And I've heard from them loud and clear. They're feeling the pressure as well.
Previously, I've heard that you don't have a mandate for how many numbers of people should be on during a shift at a particular time, and that it is the district commander that decides that. Is that something that you're going to be looking at maybe doing an across-the-board mandated number of officers deployed during a shift?
I'm looking at every resource the service has currently, and looking as we sit down with my executive team here right away. That's one of our big challenges, is to look at all our resources and make sure that we are focusing our core priorities, that we have the right kind of deployment to meet the needs of the day, and that's certainly a big challenge for us right now.
Chief, what's the learning curve been like? I mean, you've just taken over the position, and this uptake in violence has happened. I mean, just from a personal perspective, I mean, what is the learning curve been like for you?
You know what? Because I've been with the service for quite a long time, it's not so much a learning curve as we've been through this before. It's what we've learned from our last time. And this is the differences in the service now are remarkable from, say 10 years ago when we were going through this. The onset of a real-time operations center means we have a 24/7 visibility into all operations at any given time. Our ability to take our intelligence apparatus now and modernize it through our acquisitions of different data systems and our use of our analysts around understanding what our data really means. I mean, in terms of like every company, the amount of data we gather isn't very useful if you can't pull it out and have it tell a story and help direct you. So I think those are the big differences. Our investigative groups, like our Guns and Gangs group, didn't exist back then. So we have more dedicated investigative resources. We have more opportunities to get it right early. Our challenges are how much the law has changed, how much the complexity of policing has changed at the same time. So it's simple things like, arresting a half a dozen people for gang violence sounds the same as what 10 years ago, except the complexity to get that in court now. You'll have multiple phones and devices and computers with you, and all those require forensic analysis as evidence gathering, for instance. And that's with every crime that occurs in the city right now. So much involves technology that we're trying to get caught up about the kind of effort that goes on in the background to get something into court properly. Our challenge is not to arrest people as much as it is to arrest people with a real professional prosecution package so that the right sentences are offered to us. And I'd say that's the biggest difference from now to what we learned in the past.
So just to be clear, you're saying that although helpful, technology is also preventing you guys from maybe being speedy as you would like to be with these?
No, it's just modern. Honestly, technology is just our reality right now. It's in every walk of life, and it's just policing, like every other walk of life, has to adapt to the presence of technology. It's incredibly helpful in terms of how we do our job, but it's also one of our challenges in terms of bringing evidence to court. It is our new world.
Actually, Chief, year-over-year increase in gun violence in the city, 2 shootings, in the last, I think, 24, 36 hours. What would you say to the public in the sense of what is going on here and what's being done about it?
What's going on for sure is just a new trend on the presence of weapons and that propensity to use those weapons and just the day-to-day activities these criminals have with each other. For us, it is a cause for us to relook at ourselves, to make sure that a professional police service, the one that Calgarians come to expect, is on the street, and it's doing everything it can to get in front of it and create long-term solutions. I'm not going to insult the intelligence of people that suggest this is something you arrest your way out of, but enforcement is going to be a strongly important feature of this. There are people that need to be arrested. They need to be before the courts, and they need to be locked away in order to really create safety. And that's something that unfortunately has to happen. We certainly learned that in our last spat of gang violence. When you put the right people away, get them before the courts with the right kind of prosecution packages, you have effect. And in our case, that is certainly one of our major goals.
Can you draw from that maybe what you're seeing over the last 6 months, 8 months is kind of something that's very fluid, very new players, especially on the street level, and that you're just, in a sense, trying to get ahead of that curve?
I'll let these guys talk about the new players, but yes, that's again, it's not like there's a playbook. I can tell you exactly who everybody is as these people come and go. There's great connections right now to the Lower Mainland. There's this transition route between the Lower Mainland and Calgary where people come and go, and like every other part of society, it's a very mobile society, as our criminals are very mobile as well. So it's not like they necessarily are born and bred Calgarians who live in the same community all their life. The challenges are identifying who are these people, where they come from, and where are they today. So.
And the guns, where are you seeing this coming from? Over the Montana-Alberta border, from West Coast?
I'll let these guys talk about that a bit more, because it's just not to misrepresent it. But yeah, there's an assumption. There's lots of assumptions where guns come from, but the fact is they're here, and like other cities, it's not new to It's not just a Calgary phenomenon. We're seeing it all over Canada. The guns are becoming more and more prevalent in Canadian society.
And how are you finding this relationship with local mainland BC, Toronto? Are you finding you're having to enhance that relationship in terms of communications, in terms of intelligence gathering? Speaks to kind of what we're seeing here.
We have great relationships with the investigative efforts in the Lower Mainland. We have for some time. It's been it's a fairly unique feature of the relationship of crime as it exists through this corridor, and we've had ongoing, long-standing relationships and foster them every day because they're an important facet of our understanding about how this mobility occurs.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what Calgarians can do to, help you guys throughout this process? Community groups, what can people do? They're worried, they're scared, they want to help.
Well, I really don't want everybody to be worried and scared, but I do appreciate the idea that the community does have a role to play in this. As we see sort of the collateral effects of a lot of these crimes where offenders are stealing cars, or they're breaking into houses, or they're doing crimes of opportunity to support some of their other lifestyles, I think the community can always make sure they're resilient on this, that they're locking their cars, that they're locking their homes. But the biggest thing to do is that they see things, they tell us about it. When you become aware of something, you have suspicions about activity in your neighborhoods, or stepping forward and talking to the police about it is incredibly helpful. That is always the key to long-term solution, is the extent to which the community involves themselves in the solution. And Calgary's always been strong that way. That certainly was a big part of our last go-around with this, and we certainly are leaning on them now to become involved. I mean, the real message to any of the communities is whether you're part of the offending group or just innocent people, is that these are real lives that are at risk, and people have to understand that how serious it is to use weapons like they are with such random recklessness.